The whole room went silent the moment her uniform tore. In front of everyone, the millionaire's blind date grabbed the black maid's dress and ripped it apart, leaving her frozen in shock, her tears mixing with the bright Halloween lights. But no one expected what the millionaire did next, not even her. Earlier that day, the mansion had been alive with movement. Workers hurried across the marble floors, carrying boxes of decorations, cooks shouted from the kitchen, and the sound of laughter came from the hall. It was the one night of the year when the Collins mansion opened its doors to the city's wealthiest faces. Layla Brooks had been there since sunrise, polishing the glass doors until she could see her reflection, cleaning every corner with her yellow gloves, and setting tables that looked too perfect to be touched. She moved quietly, her navy blue Maid uniform neat, her dark skin glowing softly under the light. She never complained, not even when her back ached from bending too long. It was Halloween night, and the house looked like something out of a dream. Orange candles lined the staircase, the scent of cinnamon filled the air, and a huge crystal chandelier hung above the ballroom, sparkling like fire. But behind all that beauty, Layla carried a kind of stillness. She worked with calm hands, but inside, she was tired. Not just from cleaning, but from the silence that came with her life. People passed her every day, yet no one ever really saw her. By 6 in the evening, the mansion began to glow. Cars rolled up the driveway, black and shiny, bringing in people in masks and laughter. Layla stood by the main hallway, watching as her boss, Andrew Collins, stepped out from his office. He was tall, dressed in a black tuxedo that fit perfectly, his silver watch glinting under the light. He didn't look like a man who smiled often, and the lines on his face spoke of a life lived more in meetings than in moments of joy. But he had kind eyes, the kind that noticed things others ignored. "Good evening, Mr. Collins," Layla said softly, bowing her head slightly. He nodded once. "Everything ready?" "Yes, sir," she said. "Good," he replied, his voice calm, his face unreadable. Minutes later, a red car stopped at the gate. Out stepped a woman in a long red gown that hugged her body like it was made for her. Her blonde hair was perfectly curled, her lips painted bright as fire. That was Samantha Reed, Andrew's blind date for the night. Layla didn't need anyone to tell her who she was. She could tell by the way people looked at her, by how even the guards stood taller when she walked past. Samantha smiled sweetly at Andrew as she entered, wrapping her arm around his. "Your house is beautiful," she said. Then her eyes landed on Layla. For a second, their eyes met, one full of confidence, the other of quiet grace. Samantha's smile faded slightly, replaced by something colder. Layla looked away and continued setting the glasses on the table. As the party began, the house came alive with music. People laughed, danced, and raised their glasses high. The air smelled of wine and perfume. Layla moved between them silently, collecting empty plates, refilling drinks, smiling when spoken to, and fading back into the background when she wasn't. But Samantha couldn't stop watching her. Every time Layla walked by, Samantha's eyes followed. Maybe it was the way Andrew spoke politely to her, or the way Layla's calmness made her beauty stand out even more. Whatever it was, jealousy began to curl inside Samantha's chest. "Who is she again?" she asked one of the guests, her voice sharp under her smile. "The maid," someone whispered. Samantha sipped her drink slowly, her eyes narrowing. Near the middle of the night, Layla carried a tray of fresh drinks into the ballroom. The chandelier above her shimmered softly, the light making her skin glow like bronze. She tried to stay unnoticed, moving between the guests, careful with every step. But as she passed behind Samantha, someone bumped into her arm. The glass tilted, spilling a small drop on the marble floor near Samantha's dress. It didn't even touch the fabric, but the sound of the drop seemed to echo louder than the music. Samantha turned sharply. "Are you serious right now?" she said, her voice rising. Layla froze. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. It slipped a little, but I didn't—" "Do you know how much this dress costs?" Samantha snapped, stepping closer. Or are you too busy pretending to belong here? Layla's lips parted, but no sound came out. The music began to fade. People turned to look. It was an accident, Layla whispered. Samantha laughed, loud and bitter. Accident? You're lucky to even stand here, girl. Layla felt her heart tighten, but she stayed calm. I'm sorry, she said again quietly. Something inside Samantha broke then. She reached forward, her hand clutching the collar of Layla's uniform. Before anyone could stop her, she pulled hard. The fabric tore. The sound cut through the room like thunder. Gasps filled the air. The music stopped. The laughter died. Layla stood there, frozen, her hands flying up to hold the ripped part of her dress. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry out. She just stood there, her lips trembling, her body shaking slightly. Samantha dropped the torn piece and sneered. Maybe next time, you'll know your place. Silence fell. Every eye in the room was on them. Then came a voice, low and calm. Samantha. It was Andrew. He stepped forward slowly, his eyes fixed on her. The room shifted, the air heavy with tension. What did you just do? He asked. She spilled something? Samantha began. Enough, he said quietly, but the word carried power. He walked straight to Layla, removed his jacket, and placed it over her shoulders. His voice stayed calm, but his tone cut through the silence. You owe her an apology. Samantha blinked, her mouth opening, but no words came out. Everyone watched as Andrew turned to the crowd. This party is over. No one moved for a moment. Then people began leaving quietly, whispering among themselves. Samantha walked out last, her face pale with shame. Layla stood there, still holding the jacket, her tears finally rolling down her cheeks. She didn't know what to say. Andrew looked at her softly. Are you hurt? He asked. She shook her head. No, sir. Go rest, he said, his voice gentle now. She nodded, her voice breaking. Thank you, sir. As she walked away, the empty ballroom felt heavier than before. The Halloween lights shined softly, and somewhere in the quiet, Layla's heart whispered a truth she had never said out loud. Layla didn't sleep that night. She sat at the edge of her small bed, her yellow gloves still lying beside her cleaning cart, and the torn uniform folded neatly in her hands. The room was quiet, except for the sound of the old ceiling fan turning slowly above her. Outside, the city lights of Chicago blinked faintly through the window, but she wasn't looking at them. Her mind was still in that ballroom. The echo of the tearing sound hadn't left her ears. The gasp of the crowd, the weight of the jacket on her shoulders, and the look in Mr. Collins's eyes, all of it played again and again in her head. She touched the fabric where it had ripped, her fingers trembling slightly. She had been embarrassed before in life, but never like that. That moment had stripped her of more than just fabric. It had stripped her of her pride. She looked down at the dark jacket folded beside her. It was smooth and smelled faintly of his cologne, like quiet strength. He had placed it around her shoulders without hesitation, without caring what anyone thought. That single act had stayed in her heart like a light that refused to go out. She whispered softly into the quiet. Why did he do that? But no answer came, only the hum of the fan above her. The next morning, the mansion was strangely silent. The laughter from the night before had vanished. Most of the guests had left messages of apology or gossip, but Mr. Collins hadn't come downstairs yet. The staff whispered in small corners, their eyes glancing at Layla every time she passed. She kept her head down and worked. She swept the marble floors, polished the silver trays, and replaced the candles that had melted through the night. But no matter what she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that the whole house was watching her. When she walked past the dining hall, she overheard two maids whispering. I heard she tore the boss's date's dress, one said quietly. No, the other replied. It was the other way around. The lady in red did it. Well, either way, Mr. Collins looked angry. I've never seen him like that." Layla pretended not to hear. She didn't want pity, and she didn't want attention. She only wanted peace. But peace was not what waited for her that day. Around noon, she was in the hallway dusting the pictures on the wall. The portraits of men in suits stared down at her generations of Collins men, proud and untouchable. As she reached for the last frame, she heard footsteps behind her. Slow, steady ones. "Layla," a familiar voice said. She turned quickly. It was Andrew Collins. He was dressed in a gray suit, his tie slightly loose, his eyes tired but calm. "Yes, sir," she said quietly, her hands tightening around the cloth. "I'd like to see you in my office when you finish that," he said. His tone wasn't harsh, but there was a kind of weight in it. "Yes, Mr. Collins," she replied. He nodded once, then walked away. The sound of his footsteps faded, but her heartbeat grew heavier. An hour later, she stood at the door of his office. She hesitated for a few seconds, her hand hovering near the handle. What if he was angry? What if he wanted to fire her? "Come in," his voice said from inside, calm as always. Layla opened the door slowly and stepped in. The room smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, touching the dark wooden shelves that lined the walls. Andrew sat behind his desk, looking through a few papers, then lifted his eyes to her. "Sit down, Layla," he said softly. She sat on the edge of the chair, her hands folded on her lap. "Yes, sir." He leaned back, studying her quietly. "About last night," he said, "I want you to know what happened wasn't your fault." Layla kept her eyes on her hands. "Thank you, sir, but it still happened in your house. I should have been more careful." He shook his head slowly. "No, you shouldn't blame yourself for someone else's cruelty." Her eyes lifted slightly. "I didn't think you would defend me," she admitted softly. He sighed and looked away toward the window. "Neither did I." There was silence for a long time. Only the faint ticking of the clock could be heard. Finally, he spoke again. "That woman, Samantha, won't be coming back." Layla blinked, surprised. "You mean?" "Yes," he said firmly. "I asked her to leave before she could embarrass anyone else. What she did was unacceptable." She nodded slowly, her throat tight. "Thank you, sir." He looked at her again. "You know, I've seen hundreds of people in my life," he said quietly. "But when that happened, you didn't shout, you didn't fight, you didn't even defend yourself. You just stood there, calm. That took strength." Layla looked down again, her voice soft. "I learned long ago that shouting doesn't fix anything, sir. It only makes the pain louder." His expression softened. "Who taught you that?" "My mother," she said. "She used to clean houses too. She always said, 'Layla, if someone tries to shame you, don't give them your voice. Give them your silence. Silence makes them see themselves.'" Andrew smiled faintly. "She was a wise woman." "She was," Layla whispered. "She died 2 years ago." He was quiet for a moment, his eyes thoughtful. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Thank you," she said gently. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "Layla, you've worked here for 6 months, and I'll admit I barely noticed you. That's on me. But last night, I saw you differently. I saw someone strong, not invisible." Her breath caught slightly. "I just did my job, sir." "Sometimes doing your job with grace is the loudest form of dignity," he replied. The words touched something deep in her. For the first time, she saw that his calmness wasn't cold, it was controlled pain, the kind that comes from losing too much. Before she could speak again, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. "I have a meeting in 10 minutes. She stood quickly. "Then I should go, sir." "Wait," he said, standing too. "Layla, about the uniform. I'll have another one sent to your room." She shook her head. "No, sir. I sewed it back together. I can still wear it." He paused, a small smile forming on his lips. "Of course you did." She smiled faintly back. "It's what I do, sir. fix things quietly. As she walked out of the office, Andrew watched her leave, the door closing softly behind her. For a moment, he stayed still, looking at the empty space she'd left behind. There was something about her presence humble, calm, yet unbreakable that he couldn't stop thinking about. He turned to the window, watching the rain begin to fall outside. He didn't know it yet, but the storm that had started in that ballroom was slowly beginning to change everything inside him. And for Layla, that night had already rewritten the meaning of her silence. Days passed, but the air in the mansion still carried the memory of that night. The chandeliers sparkled as always, the marble floors shone like glass, yet there was something quieter about everything. The laughter of the guests had faded. What remained was the echo of a moment no one could forget. Layla kept working as she always did. She swept the stairs, dusted the furniture, and polished every silver tray until it gleamed. But inside her, something had shifted. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Not because of pity, but because someone had looked beyond her uniform and noticed her as a person. Sometimes, she would catch herself thinking about that moment, the way Andrew had walked toward her without hesitation, the way he had taken off his jacket and covered her torn dress. Every time she remembered, her heart grew heavy and light at the same time. Still, she tried not to think too much about it. Feelings were dangerous for people like her. She wasn't supposed to be noticed, and she wasn't supposed to dream. She told herself that what he did was simply kindness. Nothing more. But deep down, a quiet warmth had begun to live inside her. One evening, when most of the staff had gone, Layla stayed behind to finish cleaning the library. It was her favorite room in the mansion. The air always smelled of old paper and cedar wood, and the big windows let in a soft orange glow from the city lights. As she reached for the top shelf to dust, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned and froze slightly. It was Andrew Collins. "Still working this late?" he asked, his voice calm, his hands in his pockets. Layla lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. "I just wanted to finish this room before tomorrow, sir." He walked closer, his shoes silent on the rug. "You don't have to push yourself so hard, Layla. You've done more than enough." She shook her head softly. "It's fine, sir. Work keeps my mind busy." Andrew studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Does it really, or does it just keep your heart quiet?" She looked at him then, her dark eyes reflecting the soft light. "Maybe both," she said gently. He gave a small nod, his eyes never leaving her. "I've been meaning to talk to you," he said. "Please, sit." Layla hesitated. "Sir, I don't think—" "Please," he said again, his voice softer this time. She sat on the small couch near the window, her hands clasped together. Andrew sat opposite her, his posture straight but relaxed. "I want to apologize," he began slowly. "Not just for what happened that night, but for how long I let this house feel like a place where people could be hurt and no one would care." Layla shook her head quickly. "You don't have to say that, sir. You already defended me." He looked down at his hands, then back at her. "That was the least I could do. But when I watched you standing there, humiliated, and still holding yourself with calm and grace, I realized how wrong I've been about what it means to have power." Layla stayed silent, her heart heavy with emotion. She could feel that he meant every word. He continued quietly. "When I started building my company, I thought respect came from fear. I thought silence meant peace. But that night, I saw what real strength looks like. It was standing right in front of me, holding back tears and refusing to break." Layla's throat tightened. She looked down at her hands. "I didn't feel strong that night, sir," she whispered. "I just didn't want to make things worse." He smiled faintly. "You did more than you know. You taught me something no meeting or business deal ever could." He reached into his jacket and took out a small white envelope, placing it on the table between them. "This is for you." Layla frowned slightly. "What is it? An opportunity?" he said. "I spoke with the director of a nursing program downtown. I remember you mentioned your mother used to clean houses and wanted you to study nursing. I want to help you make that happen." Layla froze. "Sir, I can't accept that." He leaned forward slightly. "It's not charity, Layla. You've earned it. You've given your time, your honesty, and your strength to this house. It's time someone gave you a chance in return." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she tried to hold them back. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Just say yes," he said quietly. Her lips trembled. "Yes," she finally said, her voice breaking. "Thank you, sir. I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," he said softly. "By being you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the city outside. Layla looked at the envelope, then at him. His face was calm, but his eyes carried something different, something she couldn't name. She stood slowly. "Sir, may I ask you something?" He nodded. "Of course." "Why did you defend me that night? You didn't have to. Most people would have looked away." He paused, taking a breath before answering. "Because it reminded me of something I once saw when I was young," he said. "My mother was insulted by someone wealthy, and no one defended her. My father stood there and did nothing. I swore I would never be that man, but over time I became him, silent, cold, watching wrong things happen. Until that night." Layla's eyes softened. "So it wasn't just me you were saving." He shook his head gently. "It was the part of me I thought was gone." For the first time, she smiled fully, the kind of smile that carried peace. "Then maybe we both got something back that night." He smiled too. "Maybe we did." Weeks passed, and the mansion slowly changed. Andrew began treating the staff differently. He started greeting them by name, asking how their families were, even helping with the decorations during events. Layla's presence had shifted something in him, a quiet rebirth he didn't know he needed. As for Layla, she continued to work, but her evenings were now filled with classes. Every week, she took the bus downtown to the nursing program Andrew had enrolled her in. It wasn't easy, but every time she sat in class, she felt her mother's words echo in her heart. Times, keep your dignity, even when life tests you. Asterisk. One afternoon, Andrew called the staff to the main hall. Everyone stood quietly as he stepped forward with a small plaque in his hands. His voice carried warmth this time. "This house has seen many faces," he began, "but only a few leave a mark that changes its walls forever. Tonight, I want to honor someone who reminded us all what real grace looks like. Someone who turned humiliation into strength and silence into power." He looked at Layla. "Layla Brooks, this is for you." The staff clapped softly. Layla's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the plaque. It read, asterisk, "To the woman who taught us that dignity shines brightest in the dark." Asterisk. As the applause faded, Andrew leaned closer and said quietly, "You made this house human again." She smiled through her tears. "And you made it kind again." That night, when Layla left the mansion, the city lights glowed softly around her. She looked back once, her heart full. For the first time in her life, she felt both seen and free. Inside, Andrew stood by the window, watching her walk away. The world outside kept moving, but he stayed still, finally at peace. That Halloween night had started with cruelty, but it had ended with healing. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can turn shame into hope, and a stranger into the reason someone believes in good again.